Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start with Notre Dame running backs coach Deland McCullough. This is Mr. McCullough talking about how he grades.
I mean,
his running
it's there's nothing, revolutionary about it. I'm grading their alignments, you're grading their footwork, all of the small details of what they do. I think the new guys are the ones who their hairs are blowing like, whoa, dang, coach, really? My foot was, yes, your foot was. I'm like a half inch too. Yeah, you're a half inch too far over. Hey, on my controlled jab step, it need to be slower so I can get in the hip of the puller and get in phase with him. Well, in high school, I used to just jab and run. You don't do that here. And then you show them the tape of here's why you don't. You were too fast. You hit the hole too quick. The timing is messed up. That's a lost opportunity. So these guys understand it's a big picture here. On this level, you don't have a lot of opportunities to make up for what happened 3 plays ago. You got to hit it when it's there, because that's the type of environment we're in, and that's the standard that we have for our running backs. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we were watching tape of a guy who read it a certain way, and he wasn't an argument. He said, well, why did I do this or do that? I said, just keep watching. 3 plays later, he's like, oh, I get it now. So everything has rhyme or reason to it. Right? It all comes together, and the guys say, I guess that's why you are where you are. That's why you chose to come here, because of that detail. It's going to take you to the next level.
All right, Jess, so what do you think about that level of detail that Deland McCullough is describing there?
Yeah, I think it's the level of detail that you have to operate with if you want to be a successful, position group that contributes to a successful offense, that contributes to a successful defense. And a lot of people don't realize everything that he's saying is true. Like, I had a guy that was a better linebacker than me my freshman year in terms of athleticism, but I would line up right. And this guy would I can hear it in my head in the film room. Our coach just laying into him every day, just being like, when are you going to learn? When do you want reps on the field? You're lining up at 6 yards. Your heels need to be at 5 yards. What are you doing here? And so it matters. And there's a reason why Deland McCullough has been a successful, position group coach, why there's a lot of interest on him to continue to move up the ladder, maybe being an offensive coordinator, a head coach, etc. It's because of these finer details. And it's the only way that Notre Dame is going to be able to be successful, right? All pieces have to be operating this way. And I'm glad that Deland McCullough operates his room in such a manner.
Yeah, I think it's completely underrated, because, how many times do people say, well, why isn't this guy playing? Why isn't that guy playing more? That kind of stuff.
And this is why you see Snead on defense is the last 2 years is the prime example of what Deland McCullough was talking about.
Details, a million little things that all, kind of can be taken for granted, but they all add up. Aim small, miss small, aim big, miss big, that kind of thing. And I remember back when Mike Elko was hired as Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, prior to the 2017 season, coming off 4-8 in 2016, the defense he inherited from Brian Van Gorder was so bad that Van Gorder still hasn't recovered from it from a career standpoint, but Elko talked that spring about the focus being on just these little details. And, we'd go out there, we'd watch practices all spring long, and there was nothing tangible, no tangible evidence that that they were going to be any better in Elko's first season than what they were in 2016. I mean, the bar was pretty low considering how bad it was in 2016, but that's all they talked about was just those little details. Lo and behold, defense ends up being drastically better that fall. And of course, Elko parlayed it into bigger and better things down the road. But, McCullough has one of the most productive position rooms that Notre Dame has since he's been here. And it's not surprising when you hear him, talking about how narrow that focus is, those little things that they're talking about and focusing on. All right. A little bit of basketball. Talked some basketball yesterday. We talked about the nose ring that shocked the world. Here is Notre Dame women's basketball coach Niele Ivey with some thoughts on her team's journey this year and some thoughts about next year as well.
Absolutely. I think, and that's kind of my comment to the team. There's so much good, this program, this team. We have great firepower coming back, and you can't teach experience, especially for Hannah. And that's what my entire team has received this year. It was a phenomenal year, and I'm really excited. I'm excited next year to bring back, Olivia Miles, and we're going to be healthy. We have an incredible post coming in, and it's going to be exciting, like you mentioned, and these type of moments, therefore, is part of our journey, is part of our growth as a program, as a team, and being able to win the ACC, being an ACC champions, and we're going to learn from all the wonderful experiences that we've received this season, and we've had so much growth this year, and I'm really, really excited for the team that's returning. It's going to be incredible to see.
All right, so Jess, I've got a couple of parts to this question for you. First, do you buy or sell that this year's team maximized its potential?
I've struggled really hard with this question all day because I don't want to seem negative, but at the same time, I have a lot of expectations for this team.
Well,
I think
let me put it this way: considering the roster that they finished with, because you do have to factor the injuries into it. When you consider the roster that they finished with, without Kylie Watson, without Cass Prosper, without Emma Risch, and obviously without Olivia Miles as well, and not having Sonia Citron for a month and a half, like does that tilt it for you at all? You're still struggling.
No, it doesn't. They should have made it past the round of 16. And I think what makes this really frustrating for me is minus Kylie Watson, this same team beat North Carolina State and UConn, who are now Final Four teams. And recently, too. It's not like they beat them at the beginning of the season and NC State and UConn.
And they beat them they beat NC State without Watson. They beat UConn with Watson.
And so
that's to clarify.
That's what I'm saying. Like they had every opportunity to win that game against Oregon State. They were plus 21 in turnovers. They only turned the ball over 5 times and forced 26 turnovers. If Hannah Hidalgo has a normal day, they win that game. No questions asked. And so it's hard for me to say that they've maximized their potential because they ended in the same spot as last season. And I felt like they were the better team than Oregon State. And I felt like they would have gave South Carolina a run for their money. I don't know if they would have beat them, but I thought that game was going to be very, very close. And I thought Notre Dame had a legit shot to make the Final Four. So I know the injuries happen, but outside, they were still a really good team without those injuries this season. They found a way to win. And I felt like they came up short and didn't maximize their potential. So I unfortunately have to go with no. So again, it's not a bad thing. It's just I felt like they were the better team and definitely were an Elite Eight team, especially with how they were playing the last 9 to 10 games of the season.
I mean, if they had all the players that I just mentioned who are out due to injury, then the answer would be no. It would be a sell for me. But because of all the injuries, and I mean, if you look at the specific matchup, I get what you're saying about Oregon State, but they really needed another post like Kylie Watt. They needed.
Yeah, but they found ways to work around it. They pushed tempo. They created turnovers.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But look at the freaking massive.
Those Oregon State girls were big. All of them were 6 foot at least. It felt like.
I know.
And stocky. They weren't 6 foot and lanky. They were immovable objects. If they set a screen, a Notre Dame player is not fighting through that screen.
Right. I mean, and again, they played a month and a half without Citron. They get her back. By the end of the season, you never would have known by watching, the way she played that, that she had that kind of injury. They get her back in time to beat UConn at UConn. I get what you're saying because, they did this. This is the team that beat UConn. This is a team that beat NC State, and both those teams are in the Final Four now. But, they were 17-6 after losing to NC State in the middle of February. They were 27-6 entering last Friday's Sweet 16 game after rattling off 10 straight wins. I think, the tournament is so much, especially once you get, into the Sweet 16, the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, so much about matchups and how you match up against the other team, but they were the number 2 seed after rattling off those 10 straight wins. So, I mean, they easily could have been in the Elite 8, so like how much more does that actually maximize what this season became? Well, I guess at least you can say you went to the Elite 8 despite all these obstacles, that you were up against and you overcame and stuff like that. But I ultimately feel like just the fact that they were able to accomplish all they accomplished, ACC championship, getting to the Sweet 16, and really being probably a half a quarter away, from being in the Elite 8. I think they came at least very, very close to maximizing, what they had by the time.
In terms of injuries, I believe they maximized. But injuries
Right.
aside, they are still very talented compared to a lot of other teams in this country. That injured roster is a lot better than most teams in the country. And I think I'm mainly frustrated with Hannah Hidalgo because I came on here so many times and I advocated for her for being ACC Player of the Year, National Player of the Year. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. That type of player doesn't lay quite the egg that she did against Oregon State. And that's just fact of the matter, in my opinion.
Coming out strong. Let me ask you this.
And the last thing I'll say, in terms of being undersized, Oregon State, every time they needed a basket, like Notre Dame goes on a 10-0 run, what did they do? They dumped it down to Beers, and it seemed like she got a layup just about every single time. So I understand that argument of not having a big body to guard Beers when you absolutely need her, because that's what it felt like. Anytime they needed a shot, it was let's dump it down to Beers, and she's either going to make the shot or get fouled. That was every time they needed a big basket.
Well, and again, depth comes into play when you don't have different bodies that you can run at her and different things that that you can do. They did try playing a little bit of zone early on, but unfortunately, the other big was just able to sit down there on the baseline and knock down a couple of 15-footers because she found a spot in that spacing in the zone. So that wasn't effective either, And again, when you're limited with the numbers and what you can do inside, it was pretty much ride or die Nat Marshall. And, and I'm not putting it all on her because, again, I felt like the effort that she gave and some things that she was able to do was pretty good. It's just that she was going up against a couple really good, big, strong, physical post players. And it was just a really tough challenge, for her, Maddie Westbeld, Sonia Citron, down there battling for some of that stuff, so I just, again, factoring in the injuries, I think that they maxed out their potential for this year. My next question, though, by adding Olivia Miles and incoming freshman post player Kate Koval next year, 5th-ranked player in the nation, what are you willing to guarantee for next year's team?
I'm willing to guarantee an Elite 8 appearance. I felt like that's where they should have been this year. I almost want to say Final Four, but like that's just tough, right? Like that's a bold statement to make. But again, for a team I thought was at least Elite 8 this year, I will go out and say that, when adding Olivia Miles and the incoming post player of Kate Koval, I am willing to guarantee that they are at least back in the Sweet 16 next season and at least in the Elite 8. I think they are on the brink of Final Four or no Final Four. I think that's where I'm willing to put it. And it's just so crazy to say, though, because it's like that's a whole year from now, and you don't know what the entire rest of the landscape
you're exactly
is
right. You're exactly right. But, I said it at the end of the broadcast there in Albany on Friday. If we assume the full complement of players, Olivia Miles, Cass Prosper, and they've got Kate Koval, we don't know what's going to happen with Kylie Watson because she does have a torn ACL and how long that takes, like Nat Marshall, for example, tore her ACL in high school and it took her 22 months, almost 2 full years before she played her next competitive game when she was a sophomore at Notre Dame. We were talking a little bit about her yesterday. She did in fact sit out her entire freshman year when she came to Notre Dame. So you don't know what you're going to get with ACLs. But if we assume, like the rest of those players are coming back, and I'm going to guess that they probably go out and probably, go to the portal and look for another shooter like they got with Anna DeWolf this year. Look for another player like that who can knock down some 3-pointers
down the stretch.
Yeah, she was. She really picked up her game down the stretch Absolutely. Absolutely. And, like, I think they're a Final Four team next year. And again, I'm assuming all the health. I'm assuming
Right.
no injuries, that they're a healthy, because they're going to have one of the most talented rosters, I think, in the country next year if they come back full strength next year, getting all those players back. Final Four is in Tampa, so get ready.
Much more fun than Cleveland.
Yeah.
It's cold and rainy here today.
What's Cleveland looking like getting ready for the Final Four this weekend?
You know what? Do you have a second here? I'll bring something up for you.
Okay. Always got a second. We're not going to get deep into weather forecast, though, are we?
No.
Okay.
I just want to bring up a picture of downtown real quick. So just give me
All right.
Give me like
Brent
30
wants
more
to know
seconds.
where the women's tournament currently stands. And we'll be talking about last night's big matchup, Iowa and LSU, here in a minute. But they are on to the Final Four. You've got UConn taking on Iowa in one national semifinal on Friday. And you've got South Carolina and North Carolina State in the other national semifinal. The Final Four is Friday. The semifinals are on Friday. Of course, the men's Final Four semifinal games are on Saturday. So that is where that stands.
Okay, I'm logged in. Everything needs a security code these days.
What is it you're trying to find here? Are we gonna waste a lot of time on this?
No, we are not going to waste a lot of time. I'm just trying to where this person sent it to me, I'm just trying to pull it up real quick. And I have it pulled up. I am ready to go. The wait is over. Share screen. Window. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Can we see this?
I don't know. Oh, that's pretty cool.
This is downtown Cleveland. So they made like this 3D print of the bracket. Yeah. And it's going in, you can tell because there's 4 regions. Like it's going off in the back there too, right? So it's like, it's kind of like a wheel almost on each side. So like that's in downtown. There's the official logo that I've seen around downtown. And then they always in front of the Cleveland signs, this is like a glass of it's like a guitar pick shape, which is, I think they did it because of the Rock and Roll
Hall of Fame. Okay.
Yeah. And then these are, I think, the seats that'll be used inside the stadium. But
wow, those look like fairly ergonomic seats. Like those would support a guy, who's got a bad back.
Yes, they would. They are cushioned and ready for use.
Yeah,
but it's been really cool. Like obviously the weather hasn't been great the last few days, but downtown you're seeing a bunch of that, And Naomi also sent me a picture of like there's this place they called the Arcade across from like Rocket Mortgage Arena. It's like a hotel, shops, etc. And they have all these like Final Four banners hanging and everything. So it's really cool. Downtown is like really preparing. I don't know if I've emphasized this enough to you, but this weekend in Cleveland is going to be like almost state of emergency with the Eclipse, the women's Final Four, and Guardians opening day.
Right.
There is a lot going on.
I was watching McAfee earlier today, and he had the Iowa head coach on. They were on the bus driving to the airport in Albany, and they were flying straight from Albany into Cleveland.
Oh, nice!
Because the games, of course, start on Friday. Typically, they kind of go home.
So they're here.
Day. They don't. Yeah, they should be in Cleveland right now.
All the teams are in downtown Cleveland. Like, dang, it's cold and rainy here.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Cleveland and Albany couldn't tell too much apart, by the time it was all said and done.
It's funny. There's this podcast I listen to that features 2 NBA players for the New York Knicks, and they love ragging on Cleveland. And like they basically like said Cleveland is one of their worst cities to come to, and I'm just I hadn't heard that before, so I'm curious to kind of see like if that's the experience for everyone.
Brent's asking if I had my epidural shot yet for my back. I have not. I finally got it scheduled today. It took them a week to call me back. But I've got it. It's actually going to be week after next. It's going to be a little while. It is feeling better right now since I've been home with a little, some better back support, some different exercises and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes. All right, here's what Illinois head coach Brad Underwood had to say about the transfer portal, which is currently open while the NCAA tournament is going on. Quote, "It's the most absurd thing in the history of sport. This is ridiculous. I've got one coach scouting and two just living in the portal. I'm making recruiting calls as we're preparing for an Elite Eight game." End quote. You buy or sell what Underwood is saying? Does he have a point here?
I buy it, but you never bring it up in the manner that he did. He's presenting it as an excuse, almost like, "Hey, I'm coaching an Elite Eight game, and we just fell short, etc., etc." Well, I got news for you. UConn's doing the same thing. Bama's doing the same thing. NC State's doing the same thing. Do I think it's stupid? 100%. I think it's stupid that the portal opens while these top end programs are competing in the tournament and trying to make it, their national championship run. But as I was just hinting at, every other coach in the nation is going through this that is still playing.
Well,
and two, I don't think it's what you present after losing in an Elite Eight game. I think it's just, you know what I mean? It's just immediately seen as excuses.
It sounds like it sounds like an excuse. I hear that side of it. But I mean, just like with football coaches in December, and the reason, like we were talking about with Ryan earlier, they're moving this early signing period to June. They're trying to take some of the busyness out of the month of December, especially once you add the college football playoff. They're going to move up the December signing period to try to get, and the portal, like to try to, alleviate sort of some of that clutter. Like for basketball, I get it. There are more than 300 Division I basketball teams in the country. The vast majority of them, like to your point about, well, all these other coaches are doing it too. Well, the vast majority of them were done playing, their seasons ended once their conference tournaments ended because they didn't end up going to the NCAA tournament or the NIT or the CBI. So the vast majority of them have already been home and they're digging into the portal right now. They don't have other things to worry about, except for maybe they've got a little staff shuffling and that kind of stuff. But there are programs who are still doing coaching searches right now. And the Final Four is where a lot of the interviews take place. So you still have a lot of that going on, so it's not like football where the players can transfer at mid-semester. So I don't understand why the rush, why you can't just wait until the NCAA, wait until the Final Four is over. And then you've got the whole month of April potentially to do the portal at that point. I don't understand why it needs to be now in March, the most important time of the year, for the teams that did make it into the tournament. Why you don't just wait until the end of the Final Four, do it in April, let it open up in April once everyone's done. That's what I would do. So I think he's got a point. I buy what he's saying.
No, he's got a point, 100%. I just don't like the way he presented it.
Right. You're just saying the way he presented it makes it sound like an excuse, which I can
wait
that.
like 2 weeks from now and then go into this whole spiel. I don't think it's the first thing you do after a tough loss in the Elite Eight.
That's fair. I get it. So Caitlin Clark hit 9 3-pointers and scored 41 points in last night's Iowa win over LSU in the Elite Eight on the women's side. Did the rematch of last year's national championship game live up to the hype, Jess?
It did live up to the hype, and it was even better because I was rooting for Caitlin Clark this season, right? I thought she fell short last season. I've bought in on the Caitlin Clark train, and that's who I want to win this whole thing. And so, whether or not that's what you wanted or you felt like LSU maybe wasn't as good as last year, that's up to you to decide. But I sent you something, I think maybe right before the show or during the show. That game yesterday, let me make sure I have my numbers right. I'm pretty sure it had 12 million viewers, something like that. I was
still waiting to see the numbers come through. Did you send that to me on Twitter?
Yeah, so it says Iowa versus LSU shattered the record for the most watched women's game in basketball history, college basketball history.
Holy cow.
Averaging
12.3 million.
Only 5 NCAA football games drew bigger audiences last season. So I think it lived up to the hype, and I think a lot of other people agree with me.
No, it absolutely lived up to the hype. And the fact that 12.3 million people tuned in on a Monday night to make it the most viewed women's basketball game ever, like that's like what, around 4 million more, not 4 million, like 2.5 million more, I think, than the peak for last year's national championship game between the two. And I mean, like in terms of living up to the hype, I was thinking about this, like I've had a connection to women's basketball since my sister was playing more than 30 years ago when she played in college, and it's obviously continued over the last 25 or so years with my involvement calling Notre Dame women's games and that kind of stuff. But that said, I don't sit and watch like every minute of every, like women's basketball game or even every women's tournament game, or the Final Fours or whatever. And for that matter, I'm not even, I'm also not glued to every minute, of the majority of men's college basketball games. Watch a lot more during the tournament. But, I guess my point is there has to be something compelling for me to sit there for a couple of hours and really be into it, because you know how I am. I'm Mr. With the remote, I'm flipping back and forth to other stuff. If you're not keeping me engaged, I'm tuning into something else at least for a couple of minutes, and then I'm coming back to it. But we were sitting here, the whole house, we're watching this thing because last night's game had it. It had a great storyline. Obviously, you had, depending on which side you were on, it had the villain, it had the good guy, the bad guy, great players worth watching. And then obviously when Caitlin Clark is sitting there bombing in 28 and 30-foot three-pointers and Haley Van Lith is just mismatched all night, has no answers, and Kim Mulkey is getting all the criticism for that today. There obviously are not a whole lot of teams and coaches who have answers for Caitlin Clark, and that's why Iowa is where they are. But it was a great game. It absolutely lived up to the billing. It had everything you could ask for, with the exception of, and we touched on this a little bit yesterday, I mean, wasn't completely sold on every foul that Angel Reese, even though I'm not an Angel Reese fan, I wasn't cheering for her or LSU by any means. Felt like her fouling out, she probably was out of that game a little bit sooner than she should have been. But otherwise, absolutely lived up to everything else.
Well, it's funny because the amount of tweets on Twitter that I said, am I watching Steph Curry or am I watching Caitlin Clark? Or another person tweeted, man, I didn't even know there were NBA games on tonight because I've been glued to these women games. You know what I mean? It's just like, it shows that the women game, LSU and Iowa yesterday, was top priority. It was the top sports priority yesterday over the NBA, over NHL, over MLB, all of it. College women's basketball was the top priority. And I thought this was a pretty good comparison as well. I don't know. This might be a little bit small. I'll try to zoom it in a little bit. This is the viewership in comparison. It had more viewers in the 2023 NBA Finals, the 2023 World Series, 2023 Orange Bowl, 2023 Big Ten Championship, 2023 Cotton Bowl, Pac-12, Big 12, ACC Championship, and these are all football games that they're referencing to. The Peach Bowl, every Thursday night football game, it's there. It was it. I would say it went beyond the hype, honestly.
Hard to disagree. Johnny Action says Kim Mulkey looks like the HOA president of the most dysfunctional trailer park in the Florida Panhandle. I've said this before. She looks like, but she doesn't look like her, but she reminds me of, just like her demeanor and, like her everything else of Mac's mom on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know if you.
She reminds me of like that scary looking doll from Scary Movies where the hair is all like frazzled out. I think it's like a baby doll. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
From like the Chucky movies, maybe.
There's another actress. I can't think of her name, but she was George Costanza's mother-in-law on Seinfeld. Yeah. She reminds me like she could be her sister, I think, like easily. But I mean, man, like as soon as Caitlin Clark crosses midcourt, it's like she's a threat to put it up right away. And like even that just makes her passing even that more impossible to defend. So we've got Caitlin Clark and Iowa and Paige Beckers and UConn coming up this Friday. So we've got Gino's best player in America against most everyone else's best player in America. On that note, fill in the blank. Jason Sudeikis, also known as Ted Lasso, being an Iowa superfan at last night's game, was blank.
It felt on brand for me, right? Like when you think of the character of Ted Lasso, played by Jason Sudeikis, like a lot of the themes in the Ted Lasso show were like, you know what I mean? Like highlighting some of the, how do I say this? Like not deficiencies, but some of like maybe some of the more hotter topics, societal topics to kind of touch on a little bit, right? And so it felt like you could have made a Ted Lasso episode out of Jason Sudeikis being at that game and being a Caitlin Clark super fan. So it just didn't feel out of the, I guess what I'm saying is it just didn't feel out of the normal for me. And it felt like Jason Sudeikis would be the guy to be a Caitlin Clark super fan.
Jason Sudeikis is a mimbo, is what he is. You know, to use another Seinfeld reference. When it comes to basketball, Jason Sudeikis is a mimbo fan. You know, he's a Kansas men's basketball fan, but he was hanging out with Sue Bird at the UConn Notre Dame women's basketball game in the front row, cheering for UConn earlier this year, and now he's in Albany cheering for Caitlin Clark in Iowa. So it's like he's just total mimbo. He's like, yeah, you Tone, you better step off, and whatever else. And it's fun seeing him there for sure. And I saw that he got like some pictures with Caitlin Clark afterwards, and I'm sure it was pretty cool for her. And I think I saw that he took some, with the rest of the team as well. So it's pretty cool, especially when you've got a big star like that. But he's a mimbo. Pick a team, Jason Sudeikis. You can't just be all over the place. Fill in the blank. ESPN analyst Rebecca Lobo saying, good luck finding anything to do in Albany during last night's Elite Eight broadcast in Albany is blank.
Is unacceptable. Like your job is to promote everything about the women's tourney, the women teams, the women players, where it's being played at. Like, I guess I just don't understand like why, like it's just not a good look on behalf of her to just completely trash this region that was selected by the NCAA, the tournament, etc. Like what is she doing? Like, say the NCAA decides to go back to Albany again next season. What is she doing to compel fans to come out and be like, I'm going to make a weekend out of the women's tournament this weekend, right? Because, like, what she's saying is, like, don't. All you're going to be here for is the women's game. And so, I don't know. Like, when I saw that, I was going to text you and be like, is Albany really that bad that she had to go on national television in front of 3 million viewers and basically say that it's not very great?
I mean, as Michael Hahn is confirming, he says he agrees and he's from there. She was not lying. And having just been in Albany, she was not lying. It's like there was a decent pizza place. There was a decent ice cream shop, like other than that, did it cross a line considering she's broadcasting on national TV? Okay, I guess. I will say this. Rebecca Lobo lived in Storrs, Connecticut for 4 years. So I'm not sure that she has a whole lot of room to talk about Albany, New York, having lived in Storrs, Connecticut, when, that was like 30 years ago, I think, at this point. There was even less in Storrs, Connecticut, as if that feels possible, 30 years ago than there is now in Storrs, Connecticut. They've actually built, kind of a little strip mall kind of thing right off the highway, but there is nothing in Storrs. So I don't think that you can be a UConn Hall of Famer, having played there in Storrs and be ripping on Albany. As true as it is on national TV, as true as it is.
I guess that's the unacceptable part. Like, you can have your opinion, but don't be broadcasting it again in front of 12 million plus viewers.
Right.
Because again, what if the tournament wants to go to Albany again next year? You're not doing anything to promote fans to be like, let's make this a trip out of it, right? Like, let's go to Albany for the weekend, not just for the day, for the weekend.
Yes, the Albany Visitors Bureau, very upset, I'm sure, with Rebecca Lobo. Chief Brody had a hell of a time trying to type this correctly into the chat. He had like 20 different UConn predictions because he kept having typos, but he says UConn's going to beat Iowa by 10 plus. I don't know. Like, I think UConn had a relatively favorable path to get to where they are in the Final Four. I still like Iowa in the matchup. I think it should be a pretty good matchup, but I think that UConn's going to have as much trouble trying to guard Caitlin Clark as everyone else has had this year.
That was my other point. Not to go back, not to uncan this worms again.
You're going to go back and make more points? Okay.
I thought Notre Dame had a very tough region comparatively.
They did. And that, that's what kind of, it's what does stink about the fact that they made this run. They end up being a 2 seed.
They got overseeded a little bit.
Well, yeah. And the fact that they were the 4th of the 4 2 seeds, they were lowest of the 2 seeds. They probably would have been a little bit better off just being a 3 seed,
a
being
top
the
3
highest
seed.
of the 3 seeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Because it was a pretty tough, it was. Look at how Oregon State ended up playing South Carolina, for example.
And that's why I thought Notre Dame might also play well, because I know Oregon State matches up better with them size.
Right.
Notre Dame's guard play would have been really fun to watch.
Let's just put it this way. If UConn, if anyone was in the same region with South Carolina, UConn, NC State, whoever it happens to be, they're not in the Final Four right now. I'm sorry.
Right.
They had better draws. They both got to go out to Portland in different regions, and they had better draws. The draw ended up better for them, and I think that Notre Dame definitely ended up, especially again, of the 2 seeds, I think they had the toughest road.
I found my Kim Mulkey comparison finally. Come on, that's pretty close.
Oh man, that's not bad. Not bad.
Annabelle was the doll I was thinking of.
There you go. All right, Chris, a little football here. Christmas falls on a Wednesday this year. The NFL is going to do 2 games on Christmas Day this year, even though it's on Wednesday. Do you buy or sell it?
Sell. I hate everything about a midweek football game. And at this point, and this is going to make a lot of people in this chat mad, if Christmas is going to be on a Wednesday, let the NBA do its thing. I feel like the Christmas is an NBA holiday unless Christmas falls, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't like forcing an NFL game in the middle of a week on a Wednesday. Just let the NBA handle it. Let it be their holiday.
Apparently, what they're going to do, since it's on a Wednesday and, it is Christmas, so it's later in December, the teams that end up playing the Wednesday game, there will obviously be 4 teams since there will be 2 games, they're going to play Saturday the week before. So it'll essentially be like typically a team plays a Sunday game and then they have to turn around on Thursday. That's still not that much rest. You do have to play on Christmas. It's a soft sell for me. I will definitely take the fact that I can turn on my TV on Christmas Day and watch some NFL games. I will not turn it down by any means, but the NFL has obviously decided that, they're not making enough money and they need to be on a national holiday like this, regardless of what day it is, because the fact that they're doing this on a Wednesday now this year means that they're going to do it most likely every, whatever. There's always going to be Christmas NFL football game. Yeah. Going forward.
If you're we might as that's a really good point. By putting this game on Wednesday, they're basically solidifying that if there will always be a football game, an NFL football game on Christmas, because the only other day that maybe wouldn't work was Tuesday, but it's so close to Monday, so you might as well. And at this point, you'd have Wednesday, Thursday. They've done a Friday. They've done a Saturday. They've done a Sunday. They've done a Monday. So it's like
they've done everything but Tuesday so far. And it would have been Tuesday this year, but we just had, or next year, but we just had a leap year, so it pushed it to Wednesday. But the next time there's a Tuesday Christmas, you're going to see NFL football on Tuesday. I have no doubt about it. Joe makes a good point. He buys it because he needs something to watch at the in-laws. I mean, that's a very excellent point, Joe. Jess, do you have a favorite and least favorite March Madness TV commercial that as we're 2 weeks into the tournament now, coming up on the stretch drive here with the tournament ready to end with a Final Four? Favorite and least favorite TV commercial that you've seen?
So my favorite commercials so far have been the Charles Barkley ones. The ones that have Charles Barkley, Samuel L. Jackson,
Spike Lee.
Those are my
Jennifer
favorite
Garner.
ones. I can't even remember half the time what the plot of the commercial is, but the mainly it's driven by Charles Barkley doing something funny. So that's my pick. That might be the easy pick, but those are my favorite ones.
I like the Barkley stuff. I don't mind. I have a hard time believing that Jennifer Garner is hanging with that crew, though. Like the Charles Barkley, Samuel L. Jackson, Spike Lee, Jim Nance. And like, I probably have a harder time. There's that one commercial where she's like, what's Nance doing now that he's not calling March Madness? Like Jennifer Garner's going last name with Jim Nance, like that kind of the Barkley side of it. I'm with you. I don't mind it. My favorite is actually the ludicrous, get back, you don't know me like that thing, like the mascots in the car.
I like those ones too.
I think those are pretty good. It is, because it is so deep into the tournament, the song, it is getting a little bit repetitive now, but I found them, I typically get a chuckle out of them and, just the song in the whole thing. So what's your least favorite? Do you have a least favorite?
I can't say I do. Like when you asked me that, when I saw the question on the rundown, I was like, I need to think about that one more. But like, I just can't think of specific examples. Like I only think about the ones I like. All the rest are just like, man. But I don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess I don't my brain doesn't notarize the bad stuff. It only notarizes the good stuff most of the time.
You only recognize the good. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless you're criticizing basketball players.
Oh,
all right.
My God. I mean, listen.
I gotcha.
I won't get
my least
entangled
favorite.
in that.
My least favorite is the Chet Holmgren singing the "What a Pro Wants" thing.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
I am to the point where I am muting it as soon as I see it come on. Now that is my least favorite. The "What a Pro." They're like, who is it? Like Shai Gilgeous Alexander or something like that he's with. I think
SGA for short.
Right. I'm at the mute point. It's a little bit cringy, I think. So
that's the mark of a bad commercial, though. Like a commercial that constantly gets played and you have to mute it. Like that whole team needs to be fired. The team that came up with that commercial needs to be fired, because if you have to mute it, that's how you know it's that bad.
Yes, exactly. And that's like, I was like that, I think, first weekend. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? So all right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Jess, enjoyed it as always. As it turned out, we wore, coordinating clothing tonight. You with your backwards Dallas cap, and somebody had to call me out for having the star on the front of my shirt. This is literally the first Cowboys anything I have worn since January, the debacle.
So. I read something today that I've been debating on whether or not I want to send to you. I have to feed you Cowboy news every so often because I know you're very much on the fence this season. I've never heard you use this kind of language before, so I have to make sure that I don't feed you all the stuff that's I knew this. This is only going to make me angrier.
Honestly, there's only one thing that can happen this month that can win me back. We'll see if it happens. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, them drafting Audric Estime.
That's it. That's the only thing that's going to make me happy at this point. Otherwise, this whole offseason is a total disaster.
What about Blake Fisher?
I could live with Blake. I don't
Because
know
they
I don't
need
know what they're
offensive
going to do at
linemen.
tackle because I don't think they're going to play. I don't think they play Blake Fisher at tackle. I don't know if they're going. I don't know that they want to move Tyler Smith out to left tackle. And so if they draft Blake Fisher, my guess is they would want to plug him at left guard and move Tyler Smith out, and they need a center as well. Michael says Cowboys are trying to perform salary cap gymnastics.
That's basically what I was alluding to you about.
Yeah.
So long story short, they the Cowboys team gets lumped into all of the other Joneses family ventures. And so it seems like they have a lot of money, but there's only a certain amount of money that they're willing to invest in the football team. That's basically what it's come to, is how much can the football team make them? It's just another investment for them. So that's kind of the route that was going to go. So
yeah, that's exactly. It's very similar to what.
So while it seems like they have all this money, they're still constrained because they're not willing to commit X amount of money towards, you know what I mean, football.
Yeah.
Like, they're never going to go over $200 million in cap, basically, is what this article is.
It's similar to what the Yankees have put together for the last several years. They're like good enough to kind of compete for a playoff spot more years than not, at least be in the playoffs, but
they're not
are
making
they really
any noise.
serious about championships? It doesn't appear so. They're all more interested in just printing money. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it. That's going to do it for today. But that is the only thing that will make
Audric Estimate.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Hit the like button if you would before you leave. Great to have you here as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.